The movie opens with a couple, Ben and Laura, celebrating their anniversary. Instead of a typical evening, they choose to escape routine, heading into open water for a few peaceful days alone on their sailboat, cut off from the rest of the world. Initially, the mood is serene, almost idyllic. Then Laura spots something on the horizon, a stunning, untouched island, wrapped in silence. She asks Ben to drop anchor and explore. Ben hesitates. A gut feeling whispers that something about the place is wrong. But it's their anniversary, and he doesn't want to be the one to dampen her excitement. He agrees. They leave the main vessel behind, lowering a small inflatable dinghy into the water and motoring toward the shore. The moment their feet touch the ground, the charm evaporates. The island isn't beautiful, it's barren. A thick, uncomfortable quiet hangs over mudflats and abandoned terrain. They find a solitary hut, a fleeting sign of human presence, but a thorough search yields nothing but emptiness. Ben suggests they cut their losses and head back. Laura insists on venturing further inland. And this is where the film's axis tilts. Deeper among the overgrowth, they stumble upon rusted, decaying machinery. It suggests a past operation, perhaps a scientific outpost or a research team long since deserted and swallowed by time. Finding no answers, they pause to rest. That's when Ben glances upward. The sky is dimming at an alarming rate. He recognizes the signs immediately, a squall is brewing, and it's coming fast. They sprint back to the dinghy and cast off, aiming for the safety of the main boat. They don't make it. The storm descends with fury, massive swells capsizing their small craft and plunging them into icy water. With no way forward, they swim against the current back toward the island. They wash ashore exhausted, freezing, and traumatized. Shelter is non-existent. They manage to spark a meager fire and huddle through a night of pure terror. When dawn breaks, the situation degrades further. The main boat has vanished. Laura accuses Ben of negligence with the anchor. Ben swears it was secure. Deep down, they both accept the hard truth: the storm claimed it. Hoping for a miracle, they scale the island's highest point. They scan the endless blue. Nothing. The reality crashes over them like a wave. They are stranded, utterly alone, miles from shipping lanes. As if to punctuate their despair, they discover the dinghy's fuel tank is empty. Even if they attempted to leave, they'd be rowing against an impossible distance. Laura is the first to voice the obvious: another storm out there is a death sentence. The island, as inhospitable as it is their only option for now. Survival becomes an immediate, brutal math problem. Hunger gnaws at them. Thirst parches their throats. Weakness sets in rapidly. They separate to scour the land again, desperate for any resource. Finally, they catch a break, a freshwater spring. The relief is monumental. They drink deeply and fill every container they can find. But water is only half the battle. They need sustenance. Night finds them chewing leaves just to have something in their stomachs. With no radio or phone signal, they scratch a massive SOS into the dirt, a prayer to the empty sky. Days bleed together. They salvage parts from the old machinery to fashion a crude shelter and repurpose a tin can for water storage. Survival becomes a grim, repetitive loop: hunt, fail, return. Then, a discovery that chills them more than the sea spray: 3 graves. They are not the first to be marooned here. The knowledge is a poison. Laura's spirit begins to fracture. Ben fights to hold her together, insisting rescue will come. But hope is a thin broth. After days without protein, Laura collapses. Ben carries her back, helpless. When she wakes the next morning, something in her eyes has hardened. She tells him they can't just wait for salvation anymore, they have to take it. She picks up a stick and begins sharpening the end. They're going hunting. The story presses forward as Ben and Laura take the dinghy to the far side of the island. There, they see something that makes Laura's heart seize: penguins. Life. For a fleeting second, there's wonder in her gaze, followed immediately by a deep, visceral pain. She knows what survival demands now. She's never taken a life. She hesitates, tears streaming silently down her face. Then she acts. That night, they eat a proper meal for the first time in weeks. For a stretch, they find equilibrium. They have water. They have a food source. They've adapted to the island's cruel rhythm. Still, every dawn and dusk, they stand on the beach, staring out at a vacant ocean, praying for a silhouette to break the line between sea and sky. Nothing comes. Days harden into weeks. Weeks blur into months. Then the bottom drops out again. They return to the penguin colony to find it deserted. The migration is complete. Their lifeline has evaporated. Laura's face registers more than just disappointment, it's the shattering of her last restraint. She tells Ben they must leave now, take the dinghy and take their chances on the open water. Ben shuts it down. He argues that out there, they have zero reference, no navigation, and certain death. Here, at least, there is water. Laura's retort cuts through the salt air, what safety? Dying slowly is still dying, the argument escalates into a tense, bitter standoff. That night, in the midst of their discord, a light appears on the horizon. A ship. The argument evaporates instantly. They sprint to the shoreline, screaming and waving burning torches, their voices swallowed by the wind and distance. The ship glides on, oblivious. Desperation overrides logic in Ben's mind. This is their one window. He pours the last dregs of reserve fuel into the dinghy, yanks the starter cord, and guns the engine toward the distant light. Laura screams for him to stop, begging him that he doesn't have the range. Ben doesn't hear her. He's already committed. She watches him disappear into the blackness of the sea. The outcome is as predictable as it is devastating. The engine sputters and dies. Ben is left adrift, close enough to see the ship's wake but too far to be seen. The vessel cruises on, taking their hope with it. Back on the island, Laura waits. One day passes. Then another. Ben doesn't come back. Grief and isolation swallow her whole. She is now completely alone. Then, a knock on the shelter door. Laura opens it to find Ben standing there barely. He is a ghost of himself, his leg a mangled mess of blood and salt water. He explains through gritted teeth, the waves smashed the dinghy against the rocks, shredding the boat and his leg in the process. For 4 days, he crawled and swam, driven by nothing but a refusal to die on the water. Laura, with no training and no antiseptic, is forced to stitch the gaping wound herself using a fishing hook and thread. The pain is so blinding that Ben blacks out. Now, the roles reverse. Ben is an invalid, his life completely dependent on Laura's care. She doesn't break. She hunts, fetches water, and nurses him through the fever. Slowly, over a month, he begins to recover. But a new, silent killer arrives, winter. The island freezes over. The wind becomes a blade. Laura understands with stark clarity that staying means freezing to death. Ben is still too weak to travel. Laura makes a decision without fanfare. She prepares a pack for herself, leaving the bulk of the supplies for Ben. She will go for help, alone. She steps out into the frozen wilderness with one objective: find civilization or die trying. The journey is a white hell. The cold is relentless. After 3 days of trudging through snow, her body gives out. She collapses, ready to let the numbness take her. But the thought of Ben, immobile and waiting, drags her back to her feet. She pushes on. And then, like a mirage in the snow, she sees it, a small red building. A research outpost. She stumbles inside. It's empty of people, but it's a treasure trove of life: canned food, wool blankets, a heater, and most importantly, a map and a sled. She refuels her body, warms her blood, and loads the sled. She turns back immediately. When she reaches the island camp, her stomach drops. The shelter is flattened, destroyed by a storm that swept through in her absence. She digs frantically through the frozen debris, screaming his name. She finds Ben buried beneath the wreckage, his skin like marble, unresponsive. Laura doesn't weep. She drags him onto the sled and runs back across the ice. Back at the station, she strips off his frozen clothing, cranks the heater to full blast, and wraps him in every blanket she can find. She waits, watching his chest. A minute passes. Then another. Finally, a flutter of eyelids. He opens his eyes. He's disoriented by the warmth, the solid roof above him. Laura embraces him, whispering that it's real. They're safe. For the first time in months, they eat a hot meal, laugh, and even dance in the cramped, warm space, not because the nightmare is over, but because they are still breathing. Days later, a ship appears on the horizon. This time, it doesn't pass. It's a science vessel returning to the outpost. The rescue is almost anticlimactic in its simplicity. After all the storms, the hunger, and the graves, they are simply picked up. The film ends not on a grand speech, but on the quiet, unshakable truth that as long as there is one person willing to take the next step, the way back is never truly gone.